They say Gen Z students are lazy, but what if the truth is that we've just been asking them to run a race on a broken track? We've all heard it. Kids these days don't want to work. They're always on their phones. They've got no discipline. But let's stop for a second. Really stop. Ask yourself, are we actually seeing Gen Z clearly? Or are we just seeing shadows of the past, comparing them to an old idea of what hard work used to look like? Because if you talk to Gen Z students, if you actually sit down and listen, the story is very different. Many of them are tired. Not because they're lazy, but because they're overwhelmed. They're growing up in a world where everything moves fast, too fast. There's barely time to breathe between school, jobs, family expectations, social media, and trying to figure out who they are in a world that keeps changing its rules. Some of them work 2 part-time jobs while studying full-time. Others stay up until 3 a.m. trying to finish assignments that were posted late but are still due on time. Some of them care for younger siblings or sick family members, even while attending online classes and trying to manage their own mental health. That's not laziness. That's survival. It's easy to call someone lazy when you don't know their story. But behind every Gen Z student is a story, and most of them are fighting battles you can't see. Take a look at school today. Education used to be about reading books and writing essays. Now, it's digital platforms, endless homework portals, video classes, emails from 5 different teachers, and deadlines that live inside dozens of apps. You miss one notification, you fall behind. The school system wasn't built for this generation. It's patchwork. And yet, Gen Z is expected to just keep up, no questions asked. Let's talk about mental health. Anxiety, depression, burnout. These aren't buzzwords, they're real. And they're hitting Gen Z students harder than ever. A massive number of young people are struggling silently because asking for help still feels like failure. Because adults still say things like, just toughen up, or when I was your age. But this world isn't what it was 20 years ago. They're dealing with climate anxiety, economic uncertainty, rising tuition costs, and the constant fear that no matter how hard they try, it won't be enough. That they'll graduate into a world that can't pay them fairly, where rent is more than a paycheck, and where their dreams always seem just out of reach. Yet they keep showing up. Every day. They go to class, they work late, they start small businesses online, they freelance, they tutor, they volunteer, they try to create content that makes people laugh or think or feel a little less alone, and still they get told they're not working hard enough. But here's what we're not seeing. Gen Z students are redefining hard work. They don't believe in working themselves to death for a title. They believe in balance, in mental health, in meaning. They believe that if they're going to work hard, it should be for something that matters, not just a paycheck. They want to build lives where their values aren't crushed under someone else's expectations. This generation isn't clocking in and clocking out the way older generations did. They're working smarter, not just harder. They learn new skills through YouTube. They earn money through Etsy, TikTok, coding, photography, dropshipping, content writing, tutoring, gaming. They're finding paths that didn't even exist 10 years ago. And sure, they might take a break in the middle of the day. They might log off and nap or scroll through memes to decompress. But that doesn't mean they're lazy. It means they're human. It means they've learned to pace themselves in a world that doesn't slow down. Older generations often say Gen Z doesn't respect authority. But maybe Gen Z just questions it. Maybe they've seen that the system isn't fair and they're not afraid to speak up. That's not disrespect. That's courage. Think about it. These are kids who grew up with mass shootings on the news, climate disaster warnings on their phones, rising costs everywhere, and job markets that laugh in the face of 4-year degrees. They've been told to follow the rules, but they've also seen what happens when the rules break them. And still, they create, they build, they dream, they care deeply about the world. More than any generation before them, Gen Z is socially aware. They fight for justice. They show up for causes they believe in. They don't stay silent. Even if it costs them likes, followers, or comfort, they speak out. Does that sound lazy to you? The truth is, Gen Z students are tired, but they're not lazy. They're cautious. They've watched people burn out. They've seen parents work themselves sick and still struggle to pay bills. They don't want that life. They want a better one. And they're trying to build it even if the world doesn't make it easy. Yes, some Gen Z students procrastinate. So did every generation before them. Yes, some don't turn in homework on time. But sometimes that's because they were helping their mom work the night shift. Or they couldn't focus through their anxiety. Or they just needed one night to not feel like a machine. We need to stop calling that laziness. We need to start calling it life. You know what's lazy? Ignoring the truth. Blaming young people for problems they didn't create. Expecting them to be perfect in a world that isn't. Let's stop telling Gen Z students to work harder. Let's ask how we can help them work smarter. Let's ask how we can support them, believe in them, guide them, not shame them. Because when Gen Z is supported, they shine. They invent, they connect, they lead. We've already seen it. Gen Z has led protests, launched startups, created viral movements, raised awareness for issues most adults ignored for years. That's not laziness, that's leadership. They don't wait for permission to make change. They do it themselves. They're building a new version of success. One that includes rest, one that values kindness, one that doesn't leave people behind. And that scares some people because it looks different. But different doesn't mean wrong. It just means we're evolving. So next time someone calls Gen Z students lazy, ask them if they've actually talked to any. Ask them if they know what it's like to go to high school with the threat of violence, social pressure, academic burnout, and college debt all hanging over your head before you're even old enough to vote. Ask them if they know what it's like to grow up with the internet, teaching you everything and judging you for everything. If they know what it's like to have the whole world watching and still feel invisible. Because Gen Z knows, and they keep moving forward anyway. Let's be honest, this generation isn't perfect, but they're honest, they're brave, and they're tired of being misunderstood. The truth? Gen Z students are not lazy. They're just done pretending that success means killing yourself slowly for approval. They are learning to rest without guilt, to dream without limits, to live without apology. And that's not weakness, that's strength. So the next time someone rolls their eyes at a Gen Z student lying on the couch, headphones in, phone in hand, don't assume they're wasting time. They might be building a business. They might be editing a resume. They might be texting a friend who's having a mental breakdown and saving their life in the process. They might just be breathing. And that's okay too. Because in a world that never turns off, knowing how to pause, that's power. Gen Z students are not lazy, they're human, and they're doing the best they can with what they've been given. Instead of blaming them, maybe it's time we thank them. For surviving, for creating, for hoping, and for reminding us all that success should never come at the cost of your soul.